Unity Technologies explained to go public with an IPO during the first half of 2020, so as market conditions are favorable. The news network Cheddar reports. This is notable for developers who currently use the engine, as it could affect how Unity operates depending on what corporations or businesses buy stocks in the company. However, this is all speculation as of right now. Tech analyst Brandon Ross told Cheddar that Unity's IPO will provide investors a chance to participate in the overall growth of the games industry without having to choose a winner among various publishers. He added that investor knowledge around game engines like Unity has eased over the past several months due to the success of Epic Games' Fortnite, which was developed using the Unreal Engine. We believe they have strategic value to some of the tech companies that might be looking to get deeper into games. The Unity spokesperson told Cheddar it does not comment on IPO rumors or speculation. Do you have a deep and abiding interest in classic games? Panzer the Dragoon series, the Sega Saturn, are all of the above. THENGAME Developers Conference 2019 organizers have good news for you. Panzer Dragoon designer Yukio Futatsugi and artist Kentaro Yoshida, two Japanese game industry veterans, who now work together at Grounding, will be at GDC in March to discuss designing and developing the Panzer Dragoon series on Saturn. This is a very special classic game post-mortem, because you get two speakers on not one but three games discussed in depth. The original Panzer Dragoon, which was FUTATSUGISDEBUT as a game designer, as well as its followed Panzer Dragoons 1 and the Rock Panzer Dragoon Saga, neither of which have ever been publicly deconstructed like this. It promises to be a fascinating hour-long deep dive into the conception, development, and design of a seminal series, one that played a huge role in the life of the Saturn. Even if you are not interested in the history and the stories, Futatsugi and Yoshida believe that some of the lessons learned in struggling with the cutting-edge hardware that was the Sega Saturn can still be put to good use in the modern age of game development. For more information on this session and others, make sure to check out THGDC 2019 session scheduler. There you can begin to lay out your GD 2019, which takes place March 18th through the 22 at the newly renovated Moscone Center in San Francisco. For more details on GDC 2019, visit the show's official website, or subscribe to regular updates via Facebook, Twitter, or RSS. Gamasutra and DD are sibling organizations under parent company Informa. Writing for video games is perhaps the most romanticized discipline in the video game creation process. People who would not know any better imagine an author with a concrete vision, flanked by programmers, designers, and artists that shared vision. They work together like a well-oiled magneto support that narrative vision, and when the game is eventually released, the story is exactly how the writer imagined. Of course, it does not work like that. And last week a group of accomplished game writers got together to tell their honest stories from the game writing trenches. Game writers Steve Fixman, Mary Ann Krawczyk, and Tom Bissell gathered at the Quest, by invitation of the Writer Escal Foundation in Los Angeles on a panel moderated by Naughty Dog creative director and writer Neil Druckmann, to top the craft of game writing, sharing stories about difficulties working on their most famous games, theories about the craft and what separates it from so many other forms of narrative. Speaking for a mixed audience of film writers and game industry professionals, Their stories ranged from basic advice on getting into games writing, to anecdotes from the making from their biggest games that show the frustrations, obstacles, and triumphs of telling good stories inside AAA and sometimes indie games. Fixman, Kravchuk, and Bissell all entered their respective careers from wildly different circumstances, which each informed their first surprises as to what would happen when trying to tell tall tales in digital worlds. Fixman, hired up from the QA trenches at Insomniac, remembered getting his first Ratchet and Clank game that brought him to a Shark Tank-style meeting with a panel of Insomniac animators and designers. I wrote this joke, where Ratchet and Clank are in a ship together and the designers wanted them to fall asleep so they could wake up in a new environment, he explained. So this task comes out. Ratchet goes, "Oh, cryo sleep, guess. I am not gonna fall asleep." And of course he falls asleep. And Clank says, "Knowing it's good that boss does not work on robots." And that boxing glove pops out and knocks him out. They just started peppering me with, "Why is this funny? What is the joke? Where does this fall in the hero's journey? Is this the save the cat moment?" I am wide-eyed and going, I thought it was fun. I am so sorry. That's what I realized. As a game writer, you think you have this freedom, but you do not. There are so many constraints and so many moving pieces. And from then on out, I was hyper-aware that any time you write anything in a script, that changes the game for 20 different departments. Kravchuk, most famous for her work on the God of War games, got her first job at Sony Santa Monica, and immersed herself in some quick design courses to help her understand the craft she had been doing. Then worked closely with game director David Duffy to be a RAINSTORMHIS ideas for the first game and shape them into a cohesive narrative. David had a really clear framework for what he wanted. He just did not know what the story was or how necessarily in text it existed yet. Kravchuk said, "My job was to sit there and talk to him. When do you start coupling together the story?" As he was figuring out how to tell it and figuring out the designer and presentation and story, twist and everything came very organically. Many of the series' most talked about story beats came out of those sessions, including the tragic reveal of Kratos' familicide and his ghost white skin. Kravchuk observed that even casual references like that would reinvigorate Duffy. You could always tell because his eyes would sort of light up, and then all of a sudden whip, "Do you have that bullet point in place?" she said. Bissell's background as a non-fiction writer, then game essayist, then game critic, was possibly the most unconventional of the three speakers. But he told a similar story to Fixman's about being assigned to write an explanation on Gears of War. Judgment as to why the university level would be filled with poison gas emitters. That's when I began to realize that this is a form of writing that throws some real curveballs at you that probably only a few hundred people on the planet have ever had to deal with, he said. When quizzed by Druckmann about their different game scripts, all three writers bemoaned and shared the realities of the lack of a universal tool or writing format that they had in other non-game work. Fixman explained that on the Ratchet and Clank games, dialogue existed in three places: in Final Draft files, for the in-game cinematics, in Excel files, where dialogue was organized by level, and in a third file just called emergent dialogue, that was organized by character, with no script coordinator. Every change Fixman made to a Ratchet and Clank script had to be made in three different places, hundreds of times throughout production. On God of War and her other projects, Kravchuk said she tries to keep it in final draft as much as possible. But Bissell shared Fixman's woes in a story about the opening scene of Battlefield Hardline. What the player sees in that game is a conversation between two Miami cops as they drive down a busy street, hearing snippets of passing conversations from pedestrians under the squawk of the police blotter. What Bissell hears is 48 drafts of that police conversation, 40 pages of ambient dialogue, and 30 pages of police blotter chatter, yanked from real scanners in Miami and Los Angeles. And so those were all written at different times in different stages of the production, he said. And once they all get in there and they are all overlapping with each other, the player, they have no idea how immensely complicated all that stuff was. Bissell and Kravchuk both expressed a desire to work with tools they could take from studio to studio that could track version changes and keep track of correlating dialogue needed to create a fluid experience.